Hey guys, this is Andy at Grenergy. Today is going to be a short, brief video of our tri-fuel kit being installed on the EU3000IS. This is going to be a step-by-step tutorial. I'd like to apologize ahead of time if this video is it's a little rough. I'm not great at doing videos, but I'm going to be here doing my best to show you guys how to install our kit. We get a lot of comments and questions about how to put our kit together. So the tools today we'll be using is fairly simple. There's not a lot of tools that is required to install this kit. The tools here, if you look, this is what's required. So you got a flathead screwdriver, you got 10mm ratchet, and you have pliers and some side cutters. So let's get started here. After you remove the 4 nuts, the front panel should come off fairly easy. Just pull forward and put this front cover off on the side. Next will be removing the lower panel here. Be sure to not lose any nuts as you're removing them. Just keep them organized. You will need to use them later when the lower panel gets replaced with one of ours. Oh, I forgot to mention, this strap needs to come off first and set aside. Okay, I was able to get the panel off. If you have this wheel kit, you're going to need to loosen the nuts here on the bottom and lift up on the generator slightly, so that way you can pull the lower panel out. The lower panel gets caught on these wheel brackets here. So for those who don't have this OEM wheel kit, shouldn't be a big deal, but just thought I might mention that. Once the lower panel is removed, go ahead and open this door on the side here. Just want to get everything out of the way first. Go ahead and remove the air box, but before we remove the air box, let's see this lower seal right here. Take one part of the corner here and just kind of lift up on it. Put that off on the side. It gives us a little bit more room when we pull this air box here out. Should be 2 locks here. See a little bit easier here. Remember, there's a foam piece in here, so don't lose that. Set that off on the side. And with your ratchet, you want to remove this 10mm bolt here, and there's going to be 2 nuts holding this air box to the carburetor, so it's kind of hard to see. Let me get a little bit. There you can go. You see that there's 1, 2, 3 that we got to remove here. So sorry if the lighting is not as adequate. I'm just trying my best here. So we'll go ahead and remove that. So I'll remove the lower. It's going to be a 10mm socket. Crack that loose. put this in a bowl or something, or off on the side where you don't lose this. Also, now once you got those off, you can probably do this before taking those off. Is remove this this hose here. This is for your, I believe it's for a PCV hose, or I think the gas tank evap system. Just use your thumb and kind of push this hose through. You should be able to get that off. I'm gonna have to wiggle that out. It's a little hard here. Maybe easier if we take that kind of loose and everything. Just want to go ahead and kind of pry up on that a little bit. Looks like it's not coming up that easily. Twisting it so I'm not careful not to tear the hose here. There we go. After a little persuasion there, I was able to get the hoses off. So this hose right here, clips on the back, just pull that apart. Just be careful not to bend that. Leave that off on the side. This metal gasket here, leave that off on the side. You won't be needing this anymore. And go into your packet here that's included in your kit. Should look something like this. So you're going to want those gaskets in there. It goes on here. If you measure the stud and it comes to be about 1 3/8, you can go ahead and fast forward to this video. There's no need to remove these studs and replace with ours included in the kit. You can just set those aside. Before we go on and install the rest of the kit, this is something very important that I've noticed between the older model EU3000IS and the later model EU3000IS is that these studs on the carburetor are much shorter on the newer one than the older EU3000IS. So in our kit we include a longer stud for the generator. So to find out that if you do have the shorter stud on here, so unlike other kits where you take a vice grip and back the stud a couple of threads, we don't do that because the threads on the stud is fairly short. So backing these off and calling it good enough, you might tend to strip out the threaded hole on the head of the engine. So it's better off, and the correct way of doing it is replacing the stud with the longer stud. To me, that's the correct way of doing it. So to find out if you have the shorter stud, you have to take your measuring tape. I'm sorry if you can't really see, but I'll tell you what it measures at. So this measures at, so we basically go ahead and push everything in as far as we can, and it measures about 1 1/8. So if it measures at 1 1/8, you're gonna have to replace this stud. If it's over that, let's say if it goes over about 1 3/8, then you're sitting pretty good. So in order to take this out, so come to find out that this thing is a lot shorter than anticipated. So we're gonna have to remove that, and the best way to remove that and not muck up the threads on the original part, you want to keep all your original parts just in case, if you want to go back to just factory or whatever, if you want to sell this generator, or just in case you need spare parts. It's just good to save these parts. So go ahead and take the two nuts there that you just taken off the carb here, and put one on backwards with this surface facing out and one facing in. So you want to do this essentially. This is what you want to look like putting it in. So put one in here, like so. Like that. And take your wrench here, if I can find my 10mm wrench. Oh, here we go. Take your 10mm wrench. Oops, I just knocked my camera. Put it on the back side of that nut. Take your ratchet with the 10mm and tighten it. You don't have to reef on it, just enough to get it snug. And what it does is it jams the two nuts together, so you'll be able to back it off. So just take your time on this. Don't just go ahead and immediately reef on it. You might strip the threads on there. Just wiggle it back and forth until it breaks loose. And once it breaks loose, you can go ahead and take it all the way off. So once you feel that it's off, go back in, put your wrench behind that nut, take the other one while holding this, so this is, you want to hold that, and break that loose. Now see how it comes out. And you'll be able to save that stud. And do the same thing on the other side as well. Just went ahead and did the other side as well. Same as the first stud, go ahead and twist off the second. Then go ahead and loosen the jam nut. Careful not to drop anything in here. There's a really tight space down in the generator. It's going to be almost near impossible to fish things out. So just take your time on doing stuff. So now once this is all off, you can't pull this thread all the way through because this end is a lot fatter than this end. I'm not sure why Honda did that. It just makes things a little bit more difficult to uninstall. So just carefully take things out. So there's a gasket behind here, behind this choke plate. And slowly, be careful, there's a carburetor spacer back there. So it looks like it's caught under something here. Just carefully take that out without losing any gaskets. There you go. So it was just caught on this over here. So looks like it's so when you don't immediately rip everything out, because once you install everything back in, you're gonna have to somehow hold this and put everything in. You want that to still stick on there. So make sure this gasket is not moved or anything like that. So now the carburetor is hanging loose. You don't have to remove any fuel lines or anything like that. There's enough room for you to slide these studs out. So let's go ahead and do the other side as well. Oh, you might need to hold this choke plate, and there's a gasket. Oh, the gasket fell out, so I got it. Remove those. And I would take my, you don't have to do this, but I like doing it. If there's sometimes when you remove bolts from the threaded hole, you might get some shavings in there. So before I put a new stud in, I like to clean those holes out and just blow it out with air. Now that the two factory bolts are removed, you're gonna want to put everything back together. So this is, just take this out. It just makes it a lot easier. Just so that side needs to, just holds the spring here. So take the other bolt. You kind of, well, you might be easier to put these bolts in first. Just kind of leave everything hanging off on the side. So just be careful when you put everything back in. So we'll start with the front. Let me position my camera better so you guys see here. Make sure this end of this thread is clean here. All right. one side. And just as you're pushing it in, screw this in by hand. Trying to catch a few threads here. You might have to wiggle it back and forth like this. Then finally, you'll catch a few threads. You don't have to screw it all the way in. Just enough to put a few threads in that hole. And then go with the other bolt. Do the same thing. And making sure that gasket back there is lined up. You don't want to have it knocked loose. So go up and down on it. Find where the hole is. Then once you find the hole, just kind of wiggle it around. Then you can thread it in by hand. Okay, now, once that's in, take your gasket. This gasket sits between the choke plate and the carburetor, and make sure this corner here is lined up with that over there. You don't want to put it on backwards. So there you go. So notice the orientation of the gasket. And then go ahead, put that in. Now what you're going to want to do is kind of move everything a little bit out, so that way this little keyway, I guess, goes into here. It goes on top right there. See that hole? So you might want to. It's gonna be a pain in the butt to do this. So put that in while lining up that little hole over there. Let's see if I can do this. Not too much trouble. So I'm gonna do this a little bit better here. So take everything out. Go in there. Oh. So it looks like have the carburetor out as far as you can. Then this way you'll be able to take that little key there and thread it through that hole where that bracket is for that carb. Once you have it in there, come around. There we go, finally. See? You know you have it right if you see this bottom choke plate move. See? You have that right. And then go ahead and take your choke cable and install this back here. Put this back here. Well, you want that hole to face the other way, like so. Then slowly push everything in, making sure everything's nice and secure. Then take your other gasket, make sure the orientation of this gasket's correct. So you notice where that hole is, same as goes on that gasket. Go ahead and put that in here. I just went ahead and jammed up these two nuts and driven the studs in, and you're gonna wonder how far do I keep tightening these studs and know how long they're supposed to stick out. So if you take your measuring tape again, you're gonna want to measure here, and you're gonna want to read about an inch. So here's an inch and 3/8. If it's slightly over that, that's okay. You don't want to go under that. That's a little too tight. So measured from here, the back side of this choke plate to the tips of that threaded stud there. So measured from here to here, you want to get this focused here. Apologize, this camera is a little slow in focusing. You're gonna want to measure. So here's an inch and a half. You're gonna want to measure an inch and 3/8. If you're a little over, it's okay. You don't want to be too tight, and then you're going to be stripping these threads. So just take your time in putting these in. And once you have that in and measured out on both sides here, you should be good to go. Next, take your air box and your fuel adapter and put the gasket onto the fuel adapter. And when you install this, it's going to be a little tight. So that's okay. So just wiggle this back and forth like so. Just keep wiggling it back and forth until it goes in like so, and make sure that this gasket is lined up correctly. So just go ahead Once everything is pushed together, sandwiched together essentially, go ahead and take your go into your kit and grab the washer and spacer. You're going to want to put the spacer in the back side of this air box here. So take that, put that in there, take the spacer, go ahead and put that in there like so. Let's move the camera back. This is going to be it's going to be a pain in the butt, so you'll be able to hold everything and not drop the space in there. So what you could do is you can take some kind of glue or super glue, put it in there, so that way it sticks onto there and it doesn't fall into the crevice of the generator. Or you can take some kind of tape and put that in there, and so that way it doesn't fall through. So I'll show you what I mean by using some kind of tape. Okay, this is what I mean when I say using tape. What I did is I just took masking tape, poked a hole in it, and this allowed the spacer to be held in there, so that way it doesn't fall in. I'm just going to leave this tape in there. It's not going to hurt anything. You can fish it out when it's done. It's up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. So take this evap hose here and go ahead and put all your hoses back to the air box. Like so. When you take this off, you should mark where the hoses go, so that way you're not installing it too high or too low. But I forgot to do that. You can do that before you remove this hose. So go ahead, when putting this air box in, hold the bolt here, so that way when you're fishing this through, it's not going to push itself back out. So go ahead and put that in. And align everything so get you a better view. Then once this nut's in, take your socket and start to thread in to the bracket a couple threads. You don't have to tighten everything down yet, because you still have to get these two nuts on top. So once that's in, you're going to want to take this lower evap hose as well and then kind of fish it through. What this does is that this is part of the emission system. It takes any kind of gasoline vapors, runs it through a charcoal canister, and it gets recycled through the air box, so that's not venting the atmosphere. So this is what this is for. And push that through. The hose is pretty tight. There we go. Cuts through. Take the socket, put your nut on there, and by hand tighten it, making sure nothing else is caught on here. Do the same for the other side as well. And then on the bottom, tighten it by hand. Now take your hose and reinstall that back in the air box as well. After installing everything, I just realized this evap hose may be getting in the way of your fuel adapter and the hose going to it. So what you want to do is slip this hose off, carefully slip it off, and you're going to want to bend this. So right now it's bent at if you look, at a 45-degree angle, so you might want to bend this a little bit more in So that way it makes it clears the hose a little bit, and it will sit right about here instead of in line with this hose and getting in the way. So what you're going to want to do is get some kind of pry bar or anything with a soft tip, and just slowly push in this copper tube right here. You don't want to be too aggressive on pushing it in right away. You're gonna what happens is that you're gonna kink this tube. So you're gonna want to slowly push that in. It may be better to do this while this air box is off. I apologize for not letting you guys know in advance of in this video. So alright, so I just slipped off the air box real quick, and I took this rubber mallet here and I placed it up against this copper tubing, and I basically tapped the end of this mallet about 3 times, and I checked it. And how I know how far to tap it, if you look straight, so right here, you will notice this tube is in line with this this drain tube on the carburetor float bowl. Before it was sticking out past it. So if you have it lined up right about here, that's basically enough. You don't need to go any further than that. It should be about enough. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap and put the air box back and fast forward this video and show you what it looks like once this tube has been slightly modified. So I think I only pushed it in about, I would say, 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch inward. It didn't take that much to push in. Okay, I went ahead and put everything back together. Got the hose back in. See, there's enough clearance for the hose going to the fuel adapter. And here I got the bolt in tight and 2 nuts tight. You don't have to reef on them, just put them in snug. So now next step is to go ahead and grab your hose here. Take these off. Set those off on the side. And there's like a spring here. There's a clamp spring here, and you want to take that off. Now what you're going to want to do is come in here. You see that there is a hole here where the harness goes in. So you want to push that off on the side, and there should be enough space there for you to squeeze that hose in. So the hose is going to install with this end fitting facing this way. So I'm going to put this in, squeeze that on through, leave that off on the side, and you're going to want to bend, make a U bend here. And once you put that in, take your spring, put it back in with hoses, and just kind of slip it down in there like that. Not have it so far down. Have it right about there. There we go. Just walk it up like so. And it should be all set, just like that. I'm gonna bring the camera over on this side and show you. It's tight. It's not a whole lot of space in this generator, but it works. It looks like that. So bring this hose in. Now, remember how I said take this seal and kind of have it pushed off on the side, because this gives you enough space put back in the cover for the air box. So put your air filter in. And when you do change out the filter, it's a lot easier to get it. Now that, because this is moved forward about 1/4 of an inch, it's going to be a little bit tighter. But if you just take this out, it makes it a lot easier to get down here to get these clamps out and put this air box back, this cover back in. So don't forget the foam cover as well. Flip those up. Make sure that's flipped back down. Move these harnesses out of the way here. Yeah, it goes back nice. And go ahead and, I know it's going to be a pain to get the clamps down here, but you can reach in with the flathead screwdriver to get the one on the back corner over here. So I got that in. This is in. And you might want to fish in with your flathead from behind here and get the other one in. Remember how I said to go back in and get the rest of the clips? Well, you can go back in with this flathead and get the one back here like this, and pry that up, and come back in here with this and pry that up as well. And if you want to remove this, replace the air filter, just easy. Just to go in and with this long flathead and pry down the 2 clips. It makes it a lot easier than going in with your fingers. It's just really tight in there. Next, we're going to head to the front of the generator here, and we're going to take the washers that was included with the kit. Notice how this washer is notched. It just goes right here. When I designed the kit, I didn't anticipate that the washer is going to be this large. So in future kits, I'm going to have a smaller washer here. I do apologize, but this is why the washer is notched. So you're going to want to take the 3 washers, put 2 of them in here, put the last one right here. So when it's all bolted on, that it basically sits like this. Like I said, in the near future, after this batch, I'm going to have a smaller washer, so that way you don't have to worry about this notch over here. Because the reason why that one notch is here is because the whole location is very near the edge of where everything is. So once you put this in, it looks like this. So I'm gonna have to lift these wheels a little bit so I can have some clearance to fit this in there. So alright, I had the panels on. I had to loosen these brackets a little bit so I can slip the panels on. They're getting caught down here. So I was able to line everything up, make sure that the notch washers lined up. Like I said, in the future batches I'm gonna revise this so you don't have to worry about the notch washers. So take your other washer, put that in the front like so, and take your quick connect. On here it doesn't show this, but your kit's gonna come in with a this side's gonna use Teflon tape, so you don't have to worry about putting any pipe dope on here. It's gonna have Teflon tape on. I know it doesn't show it on here, but you will have that. So go ahead and screw that in. Have it just kind of loose. All the panels are in, and when you take your nut, remember there are 2 different sizes. So you have one with a larger face and the other one with a smaller, it looks like a flange on this nut right here. So you want to use a smaller one for this lower panel. Put everything in by hand. And go ahead and tighten it down. Go back in and check. Alright, cool. great. And take your battery strap, just pull it first, hold down this end with your hand, so it just makes it a lot easier to put in, and then it should be like that. Everything's secure. Next, we're going to go ahead and tighten that. Next, you're going to want to take a paper towel, stuff it in here. And I'll show you the reason why we do that. So as you're tightening this up, this hose is going to want to move. It's going to rub up against this bracket, and when it does that, it's going to mark and scar the hose, and this prevents that. So take your flathead, stuff and put it in the back like this, and have it stick out this side. And what it does is this is going to hold the hose as you're tightening it, because once you tighten it, it's going to want to move. Later on, when I revise the washer, you don't have to do all this. You can, when the panel is off, you can tighten it with a wrench and so forth. But for now, we're just doing this because that notched washer has to be in place in the back. So go ahead. See that how the hose is going to want to move. So we just slightly pull back on it and tighten everything. Just double checking here. Alright, now that we have everything all tightened up, well, I had to also put another washer here because it was still a little loose, but wanted to make sure everything's tight. If it moves a little bit, it's okay, as long as it's nice and secure. You can tighten it up some more, but it's a little hard to tighten up at the moment, but you can go ahead and tighten that a little bit more if you like. I like mine like this. Go ahead and put the cap on. And the cap facing downward here. We're off on the side. And how to remove this is if you take your flathead screwdriver or wrench and go like this, stick that in there, and you can remove that. So what it does is it prevents this thing from flexing too much as you're wanting to remove this again. But for now, this just should be okay until I revise that washer here. Next, you're going to want to put this plastic cover on there. So go ahead and put that on. Like so. Next would be to take your zip tie and push this harness here a little bit further out, so that way there's a little bit of slack. And take your zip tie, tighten everything down. So for this hose, you want to have a little bit more slack on this side. So when you adjust your hose, make sure that it's not touching this, not touching anything else. Then go ahead and then make sure there's some slack on here. So pull this a little bit more through, push this in, pull this a little bit more through, and then you don't have to make this super tight, just enough for it to be snug, because you don't want to crush this wiring harness here. So that looks good to me. Cut that off. And then double check your work here. Everything's here. Here is nice and tight. Take your front cover. Slide it on. I already went ahead and tightened all four corners with those nuts. As you can tell, everything looks fairly clean, like factory. And I did include another plastic sleeve here. I opted for myself not to put one here, but if you want to, you can go ahead and put it in here. It's fairly tight, but it will fit in there. So I just decided for this video I'm not going to put it in, but you can choose to put that in. But I did include that in the kit, so the hose doesn't get rubbed or anything like that. And also I've also included this cover here, this label. You can stick it on here or wherever you like. And this pretty much wraps up the video. Go ahead and tighten this down here so everything looks clean, as you can tell. The only parts you should have left are these, and remember, as I mentioned, this is only needs to be replaced if you come to find out these studs are short. So you have this left from the airbox and this metal gasket spacer there, and this should be it. And the next videos, if the links I'll post in the description, will show you this generator running on propane. We're going to be testing it out. Then again, I apologize, guys, if this video seems a little rough. I'm not a pro at this, but I just decided to make this video. Because there's a lot of folks asking me to do install videos. For those who purchase this kit and are good at doing videos and would like to reach out to me and do a proper install video, I'll be more than happy to have you guys help me out, and maybe somehow I'll throw some I'll compensate with some free items or in the future a discount on future kits. Alright, guys, if there's comments or questions, let me know. Really appreciate your patience. Thanks.